All right, guys, so let's get started. So I'm actually going to start recording all of these now because, yeah, so if you are listening to the recording and you're wondering basically what the process is, what happens is once I finish the live session, if you've just joined in or listening to the recording, hey Ben, how you doing? Um, Basically what it does, once I actually finish our webinar tonight, it's got to basically, I'm no IT guru, but it compresses the file and makes it pretty small so then I can upload it. And that compression normally takes at least about 3 hours. So what I actually do once we finish and I go to sleep, I actually let it basically compress overnight. But then tomorrow I'm obviously at work, and then I do training on Wednesday night. So it normally then takes about an hour for me to actually upload it onto YouTube because of the size of the file. So I'll do that on Wednesday nights, and same thing, I'll do it when I get home and let it do the uploading basically whilst I'm asleep. And then on Thursday it's all done, and YouTube sends me an email that says, congratulations, you're now been successful with your upload, and here's the link for it. So that's what it normally takes till about Thursday until I send it out. So yeah, I'm going to start recording all these now until we get a library of, probably the whole 12, and then that way if guys miss a session, then yeah, basically I'll just so well, here's the link for module 3 or module 2, whatever it would be. So if you've just joined in, what we're actually covering tonight, I'm not sure, I think pretty sure Maxine might have labelled this one incorrectly. We're actually going to do module 3. This is something that I do when I train. I just think it do you have a copy? I'll send that over to Valavan in a second. So basically what I do is basically I just think that module 1, as we did last week, we sort of went through all the different acts and regulations and sort of a bit of an understanding of where we go to actually find certain information. And then I find module 2 is then just about business management, and then we go back again to when we go to module 3 and it's about contracts again. So I just think it makes sense to basically keep on that flow of using our regs and our acts, and therefore yeah, basically so we'll go on to our contracts tonight. And sorry, I did actually just chuck you on mute for a second while I was explaining that. So by all means, if you've got a bit of background noise, guys, just chuck yourself on mute, and then just mute yourself when you want to talk. So give me a second and I'll just unmute you all in case someone wants to chat to me. All right, so yeah, so for tonight, because if you've done this course before and you did it face-to-face, I just found it was very rushed by trying to get through what we did last week and then do a contract at the end of it. So what we'll start off is actually doing a new home contract. So for those guys who have actually done the course before, I know there's a few of you, what I've actually got also is a minor works contract. And I'll bring that up. This one here, you should have this. If this is your first time doing this, you've never filled it in, which I think it is Valavan's. If you look under module 1 at the back, okay, it doesn't have chapter 3 in it, Paul. That's all right, mate. I can basically email you over the stuff that we need. But yeah, so the first part will just be coming out of chapter 1 or module 1. So if you look in the back of module 1, there is actually a new homes contract, and we'll go through that. And I said, if you've filled it out already, that's fine. I just like to go through and basically talk about the parts that I think are sort of pretty critical that we understand, not only so that we get licensed and we pass, but also that then once you actually get registered. Because I don't know about you guys, but I look at something like this the first time doing it and you think, geez, I might be signing depending on what your line of work is, but it's quite realistic that you might have a house or a renovation lined up that could be worth $300,000 or $400,000, and that's a bit scary, I think, for the first time, going, geez, I hope I've got all this squared away so that, one, I get paid for what I'm entitled to, and then secondly, so there's no sort of loophole so that I haven't, allowed for something, or, I've done it incorrectly. So I'll talk through about the parts I think we need to understand. And then when it comes time to actually filling out the contract, if you've actually filled out a contract previously, by all means, you can basically not have to worry about doing that, and we'll just set half an hour and then come back. Or the other part, what I've actually done, because a bit of feedback that I sort of gave to our training department was I felt this unit was just geared too much at guys who are going to be either a DBM, a DBU, or a DBLC, like a carpentry limited license. And I've got lots of students that I've trained who are block layers, who are concreters. We've also got kitchen and bathroom guys, and they're not going to fill out a new home contract. So that's when they use a minor works contract. So I'll email this over to everybody today. And one of the questions we're going to cover later is about when would you use a minor works contract. So this is basically a master builders one also, and this is for work between $5,000 and $50,000. So I've created a scenario for you guys who might be interested in filling out one of these rather than filling out a major works contract for a new home. And I'll basically email that over and put it on the screen, so don't feel like you're left out and going, why am I completing a major works, a major domestic building contract when I'm going to be kitchen and bathroom and my work's going to be, $40,000. So we will cover that later on as well. But basically, the way that we'll start off the session is just basically this new homes contract. Now, is there anyone here who actually doesn't have a copy of this? Because I can email it over. At this stage, we'll just be using mine because I'll have it on the screen. But by all means, if you've got your hard copy there, there's just certain things that I like to highlight. And not that you're going to take this into your multiple choice with you, but just things that I think, when you're studying up for your exam and your interview, that there's certain things that you want to be aware of. So if you want a copy, just type in the box and I'll email one over. And otherwise, we'll just basically get this started and we'll start talking about it. So as you can see here, this is a new homes contract, master builders, and it's for work that's basically more than $5,000. So on the front, we're going to write basically who it's between. Yep, cool. I'll send you one shortly, Valavan. We'll basically, who the contract's between. So once we come down, and a lot of this stuff you're going to notice is identical to what's in our Contract Act and our contract regulations. So here it tells us straight away that you may end this contract within 5 clear business days after receipt by you of a signed copy of the contract by filling in the notice below. I just might make that fractionally bigger. So that basically, if we looked in our Building Contract Act, it would actually then state, the cooling off period. And I'm pretty sure that we would have basically highlighted that last week. So if we didn't, we'll be covering these later when we do our exercises anyway. So, but if you wanted to, no, we'll do that later. So we'll go through those a little bit later on. Does that make it bigger? Is that big enough now, Valavan, or you'd like me to make that a little bit bigger than what it is? One more? Yep, cool. All right, so that there says talks about a cooling off period. So that is in our Contract Act, and we'll actually highlight and tab that if we haven't done it already. So it says there that if they want to basically withdraw, then basically they've got to fill out the notice down here, and this is basically for them to fill out. So don't worry too much and have a read through this sort of in your own time, but I'll just cover now the parts that I think are basically the important parts. So. And one thing about with the contract, guys, is that I'll cover the parts which I think are actually worthwhile remembering. But to be honest with you, the best way to learn a contract and all the elements is really just read over it. I remember years and years ago, the very first time when I had to basically train a Certificate 4 class in building construction. And that was sort of one of my first training jobs. And at that stage, I actually hadn't completed a contract other than the one I did when I did my Certificate 4. And I remember thinking to myself, geez, how am I going to go and train this to guys when I actually haven't done that yet? And so I spent a little bit of time with my training manager just clarifying a few things I wasn't 100% sure on. And then I just actually read through the contract, and anything that sort of didn't make much sense, I just read over it. And I thought, it actually makes sense now. Because you've got to remember, this contract is actually made for the homeowner as well. So it's all there in layman's terms for them to be able to understand it. So if anything you're not sure, we look at our contents page here, and basically breaks it down into the different sections that the contract's in. So it talks to you about commencement date and completion dates. So we'd go, okay, I'll go to page 8 and page 9 for that. Prime cost items and provisional sums. That's a big one that we want to understand, and we'll talk about it in a bit more depth later on. But straight away, then you can actually go, okay, actually I want to, I'm not quite sure the difference between a prime cost and a provisional sum. And one of the guys actually typed that in the box last week, and we spoke about it. So you can pull open this contract, and then you could go there and you could basically understand, it gives you a good definition of the difference between them. So as I said, I'll go through it tonight, but anything you're not sure of, just read over it, and the best way to actually learn it is just to read it. All right, so this part here is just basically our table of contents outlining the different sections of our contract and where we're going to find them. So on this side here is what the section is, and over here is the page number that it's on. So I won't have to read through all this because we're going to go with these in a little bit more depth. This is just for you as a quick reference if you need to find the page that it's on. All right, so let me scroll down. All right, so in this part here, this is just talking about our definition. So if you see something in the contract and you're not quite sure basically what that means, then come to here and it gives you the definition of it. So we actually have got some of these ones here that I'll talk about now, highlighted in our Contract Act from last week. And it's about the different stages of building, because when we fill out this contract later on, there's going to be the different stages that we actually put our progress claims in. Like there'll be the deposit, there'll be the base stage, there'll be the frame stage, there'll be lockup. And you might be thinking, okay, what does actually base stage mean? And so if you're basically not sure of that, and Valavan just said he's lost my voice. Does everyone else still hear me okay, guys? Is it just him? Let me just type in the box. Has anyone else lost me? Yeah, no, Robert can hear me fine. So I'll just reply to, yeah, Subi can hear me. I'll just reply to Valavan and let him know it's just him. All right. So yeah, if we're basically wanting to know what these different stages are, so when it comes time for our progress payment, the last thing we want to be doing is putting in a progress payment and we actually haven't completed all the work that actually needs to be done. Hey Alex, how you doing? Alex has just joined us, guys. I'm just going through the contract, Alex, and this will be in module 1 at the very back. So yes, so the last thing we want to do is if there's, the bank or the quantity surveyor or someone coming out to actually check our progress, basically to approve that progress payment, we want to make sure that we've completed everything that we're supposed to do. So if you're not familiar with it, and even if the homeowner wants to query it, it actually says in the contract what base stage is. And it outlines for a home with a timber floor, where the concrete footings for the floor area poured and the base brickwork is built to floor level. For a home with a timber floor but no braced brickwork, when the stumps, piers and columns are completed, and so on. So it gives us basically the, cool, thanks Valavan, gives us the different scenarios of what sort of foundation our building is going to be on, to then what clarifies what base stage is. So if you're unfamiliar with that, we will find it in our Act, but it's also in here so the client can see it as well. So then we'll scroll down when it talks about business days. So when they say how long people have actually got to pay, or cooling off periods or so on, when it says business days, that actually means a day that is not a Saturday or a Sunday, or a day that is wholly or partly observed as a public holiday throughout Victoria. So that's just something, for us to make sure that when they've got, 5 business days, if we're issuing something on the Thursday, then basically the Saturday and the Sunday aren't basically counted in those 5 days. So we'll scroll down this so you can read through all these. I'm not going to read through every one of them, just the ones that I think we need to sort of understand. So then we'll come to our frame stage. Basically means when the home's frame is completed and approved by the building surveyor. So basically we can't actually be just going, yep, the frames are up, the trusses are on, all braced and tied off. I'm going to actually now invoice you the frame stage progress payment. It's got to be approved by the building surveyor, and that's when it's considered to be frame stage completed. So our fixing stage means when all the internal cladding, architrave, skirtings, doors, building shelves, baths, basin troughs, sinks, cabinets, and cupboards of the homes are fitted and fixed in position. So same thing again, it's all got to be fitted. It's no good, the basically, the kitchen's there and will be finished tomorrow. Basically, it's all got to be fitted. And I think I told you the story last week. Sorry if I'm repeating the same stories, guys, because I train on Thursday nights and there's only about a week difference in the class. But I had a mate and he was basically doing a house, and they had a quantity surveyor from the bank coming out, and he was putting in his progress payment, and the deck was pretty much completed but not totally completed, and all the material was there, but the quantity surveyor from the bank basically said, look, sorry, I'm not approving this because you're not finished. And they said, look, I'll be finished tomorrow. And he was pretty much, well, yeah, my materials are here, can still be done. And he said, sorry, mate, those materials could be for another job. I'll approve it once it's all fixed. And so then, yeah, he had to then, and he couldn't come back the next day, so he had to wait about 3 days till he could come back and book him in again. So it's all, like it says here, it's got to be fixed in position. All right, so one of the biggest ones we want to be understanding, and it's probably something you'll get in your interview, but it's also something that you want to understand basically. Yeah, so it does SUBIT as well, yep. So anything that SUBIT's just asked, does it include the roof frame and the truss? So yeah, it does, because when your surveyor comes in, mate, any framing to do with the building, it includes in that as well. So yeah, so back to our liquidated damages. So basically this is something that we want to understand, one for the interview, but definitely something going on as you guys progress in your career and we start signing these contracts. So basically I'll read through this and then I'll give an explanation of how it works. So the liquidated damages means the pre-agreed amount, so we've got to agree on what the amount will be, stated in item 17. So in item 17 of the contract, there's going to be an amount that we'll agree on with our client. And it says it may be payable to the owner by the builder in accordance with clause 18 of the contract, or the pre-agreed amount payable to the owner by the builder. So what it basically means is, guys, it can go both ways. So the liquidated damages is if the build goes over time. So if I'm building for SUBIT, I say, yeah, we signed the contract and I've estimated it's going to be a 7-month build time, and I go, yeah, mate, you'll be in by the 1st of June. So when the 1st of June comes, and I've underestimated the time it's going to take to build that job, and basically it's going to take me 3 weeks longer than expected, then basically SUBIT might say, hey, well, listen, Adam, I've actually only worked my lease until the 1st of June. Now I'm going to have to go and stay in temporary accommodation or a Airbnb or something, and basically now I'm out of pocket, $500 a week on rent. So therefore, we would have this determined before we sign the contract, and it would be in there that if I finish late, that I would have to pay SUBIT $500 a week to cover his rent because I actually hadn't had the contract finished on time. So in reality, when we actually work out the time frame for our project, we want to be putting a fair bit of buffer in there so that doesn't happen. But if for some reason it does happen, and yeah, those liquidated damages will be part of the contract, and it could be other things as well, like they might have their stuff in storage, so they're paying, you might have to cover the storage. They might have a boat and they've got it stored at I don't know, at the marina because they can't have it stored at their property. So things like this would have to be outlined in the contract. It's not something that when the time comes they go, oh, look at all my expenses, now you've actually got to pay them, Adam. It's like, no, we actually outline these payments at the beginning before we sign, and they've got to be justified. It can't just be basically a penalty. So it can't be say, hey, listen, I'm going to, if I, yeah, we'll cover that one in a second, SUBIT. So basically, it can't be a penalty, just go, mate, you finished late, so I want $3,000 a week. It's got to be justified how they came to that $3,000 a week. And a lot of things that people don't understand, and when we read this contract later, we're also within our rights to actually have liquidated damages owed to us by the owner. So if for some reason it's the owner's fault that the job's gone over time, we can stipulate what it is. Hey Sasha, how you doing? We can actually stipulate what that amount is that they've, what's the word I'm looking for, not implicated, but inconvenienced us by not being finished on time. So if they've decided, yep, I'm a Sparky, I'm going to actually do the electrical work, or I'm going to organise the kitchen because I want this special thing from Italy, and I'll basically import it and do whatever else. If for some reason they're the ones who's made us go beyond the completion date, then same thing, we have to justify the amount that we're going to put in there that they would have to pay us. So we might have another job that we're going to go to, and that might implicate that and put us behind, and then we're going to get liquidated damages on the next job because we didn't get it finished in time. And so whatever it's going to be, we need to justify basically why that amount is in there. And so SUBIT just asked me a question about the bank interest costs, and I'll cover that later on. SUBIT, there's a section on there, so rather than skip to it and come back, we'll basically talk about that later on. All right, so that's how your liquidated damages works, guys, and we will cover a little bit later on. Just because you go over time doesn't mean you're always going to be inflicted with liquidated damages. We'll talk in here about applying for an extension of time, and that can be stuff that's well out of our control. There might be a massive wet, like a wet winter where we can't get on site for 3 weeks and we've only allowed 7 days and things like that. So if it's stuff that's out of our control and we can justify, hey, listen, this was out of my control, then we can actually put in for an extension of time and hopefully not have to basically pay those liquidated damages. But we'll talk about that later on when we get to extensions of time. All right, so then this one here, I just like to talk about the stages because I think they're pretty important. So basically our lockup stage means when the home's external wall cladding and roof covering is fixed, the floor is laid and the external doors and windows are fixed, even if those doors or windows are only temporary. So I did talk to you guys, I think last time, I'll say it again as I'm getting confused with all the classes that I train, but how I had a mate, or not a mate, a student, I suppose we're mates now, who was with Porter Davis, and with the lack of bricklayers in Melbourne, that they found they couldn't actually get the home to lock-up stage. So basically, because they couldn't get their external cladding done because there was a lack of bricklayers. So what they were actually doing was they would then basically do what they call a reverse build and start on their fixing stage. So obviously they would make the building watertight, with all their sarking, whatever else needed to be there, and basically then they would start by putting the plastering in and doing the kitchens and the architraves and the building shelves and so on that they could, and then that way they would basically still claim the base stage, and whilst the bricks weren't done, what they'd done was compensated by doing a lot of the fixing stage. And I remember questioning them about whether they're able to do that, because I wouldn't think they would, because you read the contract and it says, well, this is what has to be done to actually basically claim it. And sort of their response was, well, if people queried it, then they would just not worry about it and just keep building and then do the 2 progress payments once they were totally done. And obviously if someone didn't query it and they paid it, then they sort of probably got an early progress payment that they weren't so much entitled to. And it was just all about them trying to manage their cash flow, because when you have a look at how we've got to outline these progress payments later on, you'll see basically how that can sort of basically cripple your business. If you'll see some of these will be $100,000 plus progress payment, and I don't know about you guys, but I don't have that sort of money in the bank to be just have there as goodwill hoping that a bricklayer turns up and lays my bricks. So, but I have noticed with a few recent contracts that I've seen that what they actually have in them now in the progress payment stage is when it says base stage, it will say, not base stage, sorry, the lockup stage, and then it'll say or equivalent to 60% of the build. And that's then where they're saying, hey, listen, I know I haven't got my bricks done, but if you look at this other part of the fixing stage, we've got the cupboards in, we've got the shelves in, and we've got our doors and skirtings on, or whatever it would be. So that way they're justifying that, yes, hey, basically the lockup isn't done, but lockup is considered 65% of, and I'm making these figures up, 65% of the whole build, and we've actually done 65% of your build, so therefore we're going to claim now up to our 65% claim stage. So I have seen that in a few contracts. So but yeah, my advice would be I wouldn't be claiming a lockup stage if the bricks hadn't been done, but you've done a bit of stuff on the inside. All right, so here's probably the big question that everyone gets asked, and if you're not familiar with it, basically by the end of the course you'll know it off the top of your head. But let's start on prime cost items. As I said, these things I'm talking about, guys, too, I think these are worthwhile basically just highlighting, because to me these are the ones that I think you need to know either for your own development as a builder, or as and also to help you through your assessment or through your interview. So basically the prime cost means an item, for example, a fixture or fitting that has not been selected or whose price is not known at the time the contract is entered into, and for the cost of supply and delivery of which the builder must make a reasonable allowance for in the contract. So there's a little definition later on as well, which I'll show you. But the way that I explain that is when we're given these sets of plans, we're probably at this stage not going to know what sort of door handles they want. Could even be what sort of door stops You know, what type of flick mixer do they want? All those sorts of things. But because they're on the plans, when we're giving a quote, we actually have to quote on that or specify this contract does not include such and such because it will be supplied by the owner. So basically we make allowances for these as a prime cost item. So, but it says there a fixture or a fitting. So I'll read the provisional sum and then I'll show you how they vary. So a provisional sum means an estimate of the cost of carrying out particular work, including the cost of supplying any materials needed for the work under the contract for which the builder, after making all reasonable inquiries, cannot give a definite amount at the time the contract is entered into. So to put that into context, it's very similar to a prime cost item, but the provisional sum is going to have labour attached to it. And you'll see that when we do this exercise later and fill out the contract, that we've got to specify how much of it's labour and how much is material. So I use that as an example, basically tiling. And I probably told you this one last time because I use the same example all the time because I think it's pretty easy to understand, because depending on the tile that the client chooses, the labour can actually vary on that tile. As I said, we all know that you know, to lay a 600 by 600 porcelain is going to be more to lay than 300 by 300 ceramic. So therefore, we would make that a provisional sum, because once they choose a tile, that's going to determine our labour component. Whereas with the prime cost item, as I said, the door handle, really should cost the same amount for an internal door to basically fit it anyway. Now, if we've got pre-hung doors, basically the pre-hung door comes with basically the basically the hole drilled out of it, and we can just basically get the handle and the latch that fits, and basically and the striker plate, and it shouldn't vary too much whether they use a Gainsborough lock or whatever they're going to use. And so that's the difference. Could also be tower rails, but if you're going to have an electrical tower rail, probably wouldn't change too much in actual in the labour component. So it would have specified obviously on our plans that it was going to be an electric tower rail, because you would see in the wiring plan that it would be there. So therefore that shouldn't, even though that would have labour attached to it, it shouldn't really cost depending on which type of heated tower rail we use. So we'd put that as a prime cost item because the labour would still be the same on that. All right, so hopefully that made a bit of sense, and if not, you'll see there's another example a little bit later on. All right, so I'll just keep flicking through here. If you can hear the pages flicking over, guys, it's just because I've got my hard copy in front of me with it actually highlighted. So nothing there that I think we need to talk too much about. We talk about permits and so on basically in the upcoming sessions. So I'll skip past that because we'll go into it in a lot more detail. So I'm actually going down to page 9 if you've got your hard copy in front of you. All right, so actually one thing I do actually like to talk about, just so that people, if you're not aware of it, is this part here is the commencement notice. So just actually for your own knowledge, when you actually, I'll read through this, and this is basically purely as per the contract. So you've got to be aware, you've got to even, if you're using your contract for the first time, you really need to be reading it from back to front. So commencement notice, within 1 working day after having commenced to construct the works, the builder must give a written notice to the owner, and the notice must state the following: the builder has commenced construction of the works under the contract and the date on which the construction of the works commenced, so the actual commencement date. And the construction period as set out in item 9.2, we'll cover that later, that's how we work out how long the job's going to go for, started to run on that actual commencement date, and the completion date having regard to the actual commencement date and the construction period. So we've actually got to give them written notice, guys. It's no good saying, oh, look, it's a reno, they saw me turn up. It's actually got to be in writing. This is when we commenced. This is the actual date. This is the construction period that's outlined in the contract. Therefore, the commencement date should be such and such. And it's got to be done within 1 day. So these are the sort of things we've got to start being on top of, because if you're not aware of that and you go, shit, 6 days later I haven't done that, you're in breach of your contract. And not that you're obviously going to have the contract terminated and so on, but the last thing we want to be doing is showing, I suppose, the incompetence on the legal side of the contracts. We're not doing something simple by actually writing a commencement notice to let the owner know that we've actually started our work. All right, so this here is about the prime cost. Now this is probably more geared at the owner. So it says prime cost and provisional sum. So you can highlight this one as well. So basically awarding to building owner as a prime cost item. So even though it's for the building owner, if you're not familiar with these yet, it's a good learning experience for you to read through these as well. So it's always better to get a fixed price for all work. However, some fixtures and fittings may need to be selected after the contract is signed. So the examples I've got here is for a stove, type of taps, etc. If these items are specified as prime cost items, the builder will allow an amount in the contract price which should cover the expected cost of the item. And we'll talk about shortly how that works if it doesn't cover the cost. So then note if the actual, or this will be it here. So note if the actual item is more than the amount allowed, you will have to pay the extra amount. This is the building owner. The building owner's got to pay the extra amount. You may also have to pay the builder's margin on the extra amount. If this is intended, the builder's margin should be specified or cannot be claimed unless the owner agrees in writing to such an additional amount. The prime cost is less than that allowed for the contract. The difference should be deducted from the contract price. So to put that in to context, so we've said here, say a stove, say we've allowed $1,000 for a stove. So obviously the more we build, the more familiar we're going to come with our prices. But yeah, we would probably have a little bit of a conversation, obviously when we're quoting, hey, what type of stove do you want? Do you want electric? Do you want gas? Do you want a 4-burner, a 2-burner, or whatever it would be? So we want a little bit of an idea before we put that in as a prime cost item. And we might go down to local, Better Electrical or wherever it might be, and say, okay, well, I can get a stove that looks good quality for $1,000. So we've then put in our contract, and we'll see these later on when we fill them out, an allowance, a prime cost allowance for $1,000 for that stove. So talking to this part here, in reality, if they go in and find the stove they really like and it costs $1,500, then they have to pay that extra $500. Before you jump in, I'll talk about the building allowance, the builder's margin soon. So what happens is, with that money, the extra $500, that is then claimed at that stage. So it's not when we buy the stove, and say, okay, this costs $500 more. Here's your basically the claim. It's actually the prime cost item, and the provisional sums are actually claimed for that stage of the build that we're doing. And so same thing again, if we've allowed $1,000 and they go get one on special for basically $800, then we would refund that difference. Well, not so much a refund. When we actually claim, we would then deduct that $200 less from our claim stage because that stove then was only $800 and we'd allowed $1,000. So when it talks about the builder's allowance, this is something that's very transparent in our contract, that we actually say, yep, well, the stove costs $1,000, but I've got to put a margin on top of that because I've had to go and basically look around. I've got to organise it. I've got to ring up and order it and things like this. And so normally when we're doing that with our our normal timber and our trusses and so on, we would put a margin on top, or however you guys want to work it, and we don't have to actually be transparent about how we got to our figures on our estimate. Your client might ask you that and you'll go, well, bugger off, mate, that's a price. I don't have to tell you how much I'm charging for carpentry or electrical. But with our prime cost items and our provisional sums, we actually have to be transparent about that and say $1,000 and the margin I'm charging is 20. And that's pretty much standard, guys, is 20%. Some people go less and go 10%, but if you look at this master builders contract, this is written by master builders. As we all know, they're a big part of our industry, and if they're sort of putting their generic margin as 20%, why would you not? Why would you charge any less than that? So that's how our prime cost basically works. And the same thing with it talks about there with our provisional sum. So the builder warrants that any provisional sum included by the builder in the contract has been calculated with reasonable care and skill, taking into account all of the information reasonable available at the date the contract was made, including the nature and the location of the land. So what we need to do, guys, is it needs to be reasonable. We can't be going in there trying to win the job and going, because clients probably aren't going to be that aware of how this all works, and if they're not going to get independent advice, a lot of them just look at the bottom line and see what it's going to cost. So we can't be putting in there, bath $100, stove $150. So then obviously it brings our price right down, and then when they go to actually choose their bath, we go, look, man, I've only allowed $100 for your bath. And they go, well, geez, I could only find one for $700. Or bad luck, there's $600 extra you got to pay me. So these actually have to be reasonable amounts that we're putting in there. They've got to be justified. All right. I'm just finding the next one. So it just says the owner to provide directions relating to prime cost items or provisional sums. So if this contract makes allowances for prime cost items or provisional sums, which it will when we fill that out later, the owner will give the builder all necessary written and signed directions requested by the builder regarding the selection or supply of the goods or work represented by either a prime cost item or a provisional sum with 7 days of receiving a request from the builder for such directions. So we're going to know as a schedule week coming up time that we need to order that bath, we need to order our toilets, whatever it's going to be. And so my advice, guys, put everything in writing. So maybe give them an email outlining, hey, listen, I need you to choose this because the turnaround time is going to be 3 weeks, whatever. And as it says in the contract there, they've actually only got 7 days from the request from us to then basically go and choose those items. So if they're onto it, they might do it well and truly before, but by the contract, because it's a contract, everything has got to basically be in writing, so then there's no loopholes. They've got 7 days from when we ask for it to actually go and find it. And then it talks about if any prime cost item selected by the owner is unavailable, then the owner will specify in writing to the builder an alternative item to be supplied within 7 days. So same thing again. If they've chosen that prime cost item, it's not available, then they need to basically let us know. And then from there, basically, what do we do? Do we wait and say, hey, that's cool, I can, I'll just get the plumber to come and put that bath in later. It's freestanding, we can still tile and everything else. Or do we go, no, look, here's the options. Basically, if it's going to be delayed and your heart's really set on it, then that's going to delay the job by 3 weeks and I'm going to need an extension of time. And then we would fill that out if it was needed. All right, and so we won't read through these, but it talks about if the owner fails to specify prime cost items. So as I was saying before, if you start to read through this contract, the more you become familiar with it, the more it'll start basically to make sense. So here's one here, the builder to provide copies of invoices and receipts to the owner. So the builder will give the owner a copy of any invoice, receipt, or other document that shows the actual cost incurred to the builder for any prime cost item or that relates to any provisional sum, and will do so as soon as reasonably possible after receiving the invoice, receipt, or document. So we've actually got to show this is what it cost us. Now I don't know if you guys I just know with Reese Plumbing, my old man owns a hardware store, and when I used to use him for a lot of my materials, especially he had an account with Reese where he would get it at a reseller price. So he would get it cheaper than I would at a trade price because he sort of wasn't a big enough supplier to be going direct to all these different, Caroma and whoever else for his toilets, because it wasn't sort of his specialty. But if a client came in, he would go to Reese and they would give him like a reseller's price so that he could get it from Reese, then still sell it in his hardware store and make a margin on it. And I remember a couple of times when I went in there, they would actually give me a receipt, and I would say, listen, I've got approval to put it on XYZ account for the hardware store. Here's the written approval, and they would basically put it on there, and they would give me a receipt of what the actual the retail price was. But then when he received his invoice, it was only about 50% of what the actual price was. So in that scenario, I'm just saying that if for some reason your client goes and chooses a bath or a toilet, and if it says the retail is $600, but because of your trade discount you get and it's only $500, you need to show that $500 receipt. So we're not actually, we can't double dip. We can't actually get the client to charge full retail and then charge 20% on top of that as well. We've got to show the receipt what it cost us. So it's going to be 20% on what our price was with our trade discount, that we're going to receive. All right, so down here a little bit further, I'm going to page 12 now. So it's good to know what our owner's obligations are as well. I think a lot of the time we're concerned with what is our obligation to make sure that we're not in breach and that we're doing this correctly. So there's stuff in here that we want to know about what the owners need to do as well. So evidence of capacity to pay the contract price. So the owner will, within 14 days of the owner signing the contract, provide written or other reasonable evidence to the builder that the owner has the financial capacity to pay the contract price. So, because what quite often might happen is that they're not going to get approval from the bank until they've got a contract that actually says, I can build this house or I can do this renovation for this much money, therefore that's why I need $300,000. So it's stating in our contract here that they've got 14 days to actually show us that, because the last thing we wanted to be doing as a builder, you know, we might be on the go and have lots of jobs, is basically waiting around for a month for this guy to sort out his finances. You might choose that you're happy to do that, but by the contract they've got 14 days. So that then actually gives us a reason to pull out of the contract. We go, geez, how fair income is this guy? I've been fluffing around with him for 14 days and he's still got nothing. So we might go, look, you know, I'm going to put you on the back burner. You can still have that price, but I'm now going to go and start this job because I can't wait forever for my, you know, I basically need to work. So that actually, there's a lot of stuff in here on the owner's obligations as well. So I think it's worthwhile understanding those. All right, so the next one we'll have a little bit of a chat about is, so this is going to be, we would have highlighted this in our Domestic Contract Act last week, but we'll just go over it again. So this is 11.7. So limits on deposit payable by the owner. So the deposit to be paid by the owner will not be more than 5% of the original contract price if the original contract price is $20,000 or more. Now, it doesn't matter what license you go for, guys, you need to remember these. And then basically, we can claim 10% of the original contract price if it's less than $20,000. So definitely highlight those. I said, well, we want them highlighted in our Contract Act as well, because you won't be taking this contract in with you to your multiple choice, but you'll be able to take your Contract Act in with you. And so we'll do a bit over contracts in the next couple of weeks, and just in case we've missed anything, probably on our last session of the contracts, we'll go through the book and make sure we've highlighted all the pages. All right, so definitely understand those ones there. All right, so this was one of Subert's questions before. Oh, it's a good question, Subert. Does it include GST? Yeah, so everything is inclusive of GST. So it's not, yeah, 20,000 plus our 10%. It's actually inclusive of GST. And same with all our progress payments and everything. And you'll see that later on, it'll pop up. So this was one of the questions Subert asked me before, and I just said that I'd get to it. This is about the interest payable basically on outstanding payments. So I'll read through it and then I'll explain it. So if the owner should fail to make any payment to the builder by the due date under this contract, the builder will be entitled to interest on all outstanding amounts at the rate specified in item 15 of the appendix, payable from the due date until payment has been made in full. So item 5 is just when we fill out the contract, guys, and it actually will have an interest rate that we want to apply to that. And so what that's, you know, you might choose that you don't want to actually enforce that, but it's there if we want to. And same thing again, we can't actually do it as a punishment just like our liquidated damages. We can't actually say, yeah, mate, if you're going to be late, I'm going to charge you 200% until you actually pay me. It does actually outline in there that we've got to specify what the percentage is, or then it gives us an option, I can't remember off the top of my head, but basically words it to what the interest rate of the time of signing the contract was. So, you know, you might be able to justify it and say, well, actually, listen, you know, the line of credit that I've actually got from the bank is actually 5.5%. So if you go over that time and I can't pay, I'll have to use that line of credit at 5%. So therefore, my interest paying on that's going to be payable on outstanding payments will be 5%. And so then what happens, it's actually until it's made in full. So if they say if they owe us 100 grand and they're late and we decide to enforce that, and then they pay 50 of it, well then we can then actually keep applying that 5% to the 50,000 that's still outstanding. So it's one of those things that you know, you might decide that you don't, you won't enforce it. It might only be a day or two late, but you know, for some reason it drags on, and you know, you've got 3 months, and you know, you've had to access your redraw on your account or a line of credit. Then that's basically there to cover us, because you know, when you'll see some of these progress payments are well in, you know, the hundreds of thousands of dollars, yeah, we don't want to be liable for the interest on that. All right.
Adam, Subert here. Adam, Subert here.
Yep.
Can I ask a business question?
Yeah, hopefully I can answer it, but go for it.
Uh, Generally, is it possible to use a building contract to get a line of credit from a bank to help your cash flow during the construction stage?
To be honest with you, I don't know. I've never had to do it. Yeah, it'd be worth asking the question. Yeah, I honestly couldn't tell you. I'm sorry, I've never had to do that. But yeah, you could always ask, because at the end of the day, all they can say is no. But one thing too, guys, in relation to that, and this will be something we'll talk about at a later subject, but we'll talk about it now. And you'll probably hear me cover it again next week. Probably the best way that guys manage their cash flow is basically, I know with my old man in his hardware store, that what happens if you can sort of get your credit in, with your suppliers, the pretty common practice is that you'll be on basically 30-day terms. And so what happens is they actually don't run their account until the end of the month. So what I know with my old man, that basically you could shoot a shotgun in his hardware store on the last 3 days of the month, and you wouldn't shoot anybody because there's nobody in there. They're all holding out until the first or second day of the next month, because they'll come in and they'll basically load up their account, and they're not going to be actually invoiced for that until the end of the month. So if you come in on the 1st of March and put $20,000, $30,000 on your account, then you're not going to be invoiced for that until the 31st of March. And then once you are in for that invoice for that on the 31st of March, then you've got normally 30 days to pay it. So therefore, realistically, you've got 60 days from when you've actually purchased that material until you've got to pay for it. Now, I know different suppliers are different. You might have to go to National Tiles for your tile, and your trusses might be on a 7-day account and so on. But there will be lots of suppliers that give you basically 30 days. So that's one way the guys manage that cash flow. Because as you can imagine, 60 days is a fair time, and then hopefully we don't have to use that line of credit and so on, Sue, but that that we're all dreading on paying our interest on. And there's another one too, which we'll cover next week, which is basically about sort of our contractors as well. But I won't cover that now. But there's another way too that we can sort of manage our contractors' payments to try and basically like not drag it on so they weren't paying them, but basically so that we can manage our cash flow. So yeah, we'll cover how we do the contractors next week in our business subject. All right, so that's basically our interest. So here's everyone's favourite. I don't know about you guys, but probably from my experience, probably the disputes, the cause of the dispute is what I'm looking for, is basically this part here, variations. So because they all, we get, halfway, 2/3 of the way through a project, and then the owner decides they've seen something in a magazine, or we've built it and it's not exactly how they envisioned it. Can they vary the plans? So this here then talks about how we actually manage that variation. And this is pretty much here just basically straight out of the questions we did last week. Basically just saying that if it's not going to add more than 2%, if it's not going to basically need an amendment to the permit and not going to cause any delay, then we can basically, at our discretion, do that variation without putting it in writing. And then it talks about, I won't read through all of these, but with our variation, it outlines in here basically how we've got to manage that. And so with my advice would be, if you guys have probably been on jobs where we've had variations, so basically my advice is just put it all in writing. Even if it's just something that could be a change in the color of the paint, because things like that, if they come and go, geez, that's not the color that I wanted, and you go, well, yeah, that's actually what you asked me for, and then there's a paper trail there. So don't just think we've got to write a variation up if it's going to have basically an effect on the cost on what our contract's going to be. And a funny story, not that this was related to a contract, but so with my old man's hardware store, I used to do a little bit of work for him in there when he needed a hand, and I used to mix the paint. And a funny story, this lady came in one day and she said to me, I'm doing my handrails on this is in Queensland, everyone had a deck, I'm doing the handrails on my deck, and I'm just after some exterior gloss in Heritage Red. So okay, so I mixed up 4 litres of Heritage Red of what she asked me for, anyway, about for next time I was in there, she came in. Actually, it was the next day because I was filling for my old man on the weekend because he was going away. So she's come in and she said to me, that paint you mixed me is the wrong colour. I said, oh, okay, no worries at all. So I basically pulled out the paint and got, I don't know if you guys have used paint much, but it is actually different from when it's wet to when it dries. So I basically got a little sample. We used to have a little hairdryer there, put it on a bit of basically timber. Basically, you got the hairdryer and dried it, so it dried in like 30 seconds and matched it to the actual sample of Heritage Red. And then I said, look, this is actually Heritage Red because it's exactly the same as the colour sample. And she then said to me, well, no, it's not Heritage Red because it doesn't actually match what's on my house. And I said, well, how do you know that what's on your house is Heritage Red? And she goes, I was talking to my neighbour and told him how I had to basically repaint my handrails. And he said to me, oh, yeah, well, that paint will be Heritage Red. And because it's a colour bond colour. And I said, well, look, sorry, but I've given you Heritage Red. And basically, you've obviously, what you've got on your house isn't Heritage Red. So therefore, there's nothing I can do for you if you need to pay for a new 4-litre can of paint and find out basically what colour you've got. And that's what I'm getting. That's the sort of thing that you want to basically have in your contract, because they might go, hey, I don't want the beige, I want the hog's bristle. And then basically you put it on and they go, oh, that doesn't look like the sample I saw in the hardware store. And that mustn't be hog's bristle. And you go, look, actually, as per this variation, you've asked for hog's bristle. Here's the can of paint that says it's hog's bristle. And sorry, if it's going to be repainted, it's going to be at your cost as a variation because I'm going to have to get the painter to come back in and basically repaint it. So any variation I would actually have written down basically no matter what it is, and then that way there's nothing that can sort of be misinterpreted. And then we'll talk down here, and we would have covered a little bit this last week about the deposit for a variation. So with the variation, they do actually have to, or read through it, if a variation is requested by the owner and the builder agrees to carry out the variation and the variation results in an increase to the contract price, the owner will, if requested by the builder, pay to the builder prior to the commencement of the variation, basically a 10% of the variation where the total cost is less than $20,000 or 5% if it's over 20. So we're entitled to a deposit just like a brand new contract. So if they want a variation, if we request it and we accept to do that variation, we can actually then charge a deposit on that variation as well. So, they might decide that they actually now want a deck on the back of their house, or they want us to do in our fresco area, and it's going to be another $20,000. Then we don't just have to go and do it. We can actually get 5% or 10%, depending on the price, to put a bit of money in our kitty to basically, instead of us digging into our pocket all the time, a bit of extra money to sort of get that variation going. All right. I'm just trying to see what else I've got highlighted. All right, so down to page 19. This is what I was talking before about the extensions of time. So if the progress of the work is delayed by any variations under this contract, or proceedings being taken or threatened by dispute with adjoining neighbouring owners or residents, so that could be, we'll talk about in the coming weeks about how we do Form 2 and Form 3, which is a protection works notice if we've got to put a retaining wall in, or we've got to do some demolition on the boundary, something like that is going to delay our time frame. And then this outlines when we can actually put in an extension of time, which is then basically going to not mean we're going to have to pay our liquidated damages. So just get familiar with that. That'll be more one for your own knowledge, so that when that time comes, when you've signed a contract, no doubt you will encounter some of these, and the last thing you want to be doing is going, geez, is that going to affect my contract time and I'm going to then have liquidated damages. So this outlines when we can actually have extensions of time. So one bit of a different industry, but my wife used to work in engineering where they used to do like the desalinization plants. If I told this story again, I'm sorry. But in their contracts, because they were like multi-million-dollar contracts, they had in there basically how many wet days there were going to be affected by rain. And in their contract, and this is obviously an extreme, I wouldn't do this in a residential contract unless you were probably building for an actual solicitor or a lawyer. But in their contract was actually basically what actually was a wet day, and it was specified in there this many millimeters of rain then is determined to be a wet day. So let's just say, you know, hypothetically it was 5 millimetres of rain. If there was only basically 4 millimetres, then it actually wasn't considered to be a wet day, and that day couldn't be claimed. And what they had to do to justify that claim was someone had to go and check the rain gauge, basically take a photo of it, and then they compared that with the Bureau of Meteorology, basically rainfall in the area. So I said it was a big commercial contract where it was, you know, 25 million bucks building like a desalination plant. But there's something you might be aware of is what we consider a wet day and what the owner does could be two totally different things. So basically, Valavan here has got a question saying, do we need to give the customer time to read and understand before they sign? Yeah, it's pretty much common practice where you'll actually give it to them to have a read over it, and then that way they might want to clarify with either you or the solicitor that, yeah, to understand that contract basically, you know, before they sign. And that's sort of your job as the builder, I suppose, in, you know, as we all know, building so much is managing the client as much as the trades. So, you know, managing that with them saying, you know, hey, listen, it's probably the first time you've done it. Have a read through this. If you've got any questions, basically have an understanding of it. And so then I've got a similar question from Burek saying, do you need to talk them through the contract? No, you don't, but I think it's within your interest to, because it's going to actually, yeah, probably limit our disputes later on. So if we can, you know, from our knowledge when we've seen on site, and, you know, at this stage in our career, we might sort of know what the parts are that they're not going to understand, like our liquidated damages, our prime cost items, basically, what else could there be about the, you know, what the progress payments are and so on, and liquidated damages, things like that. So I think it's within our interest to actually talk to them about it and then sort of leave it with them and say, yeah, look, have a read over it on the weekend, you know, and then basically try, or not try, but then make a date to actually sign with them, because you'll see it says we've got to sign it and they've got to sign it. And then if they look over it on the weekend, they might decide that they then want to get some advice from a solicitor, but also to explain to them that once they've signed, they've actually got those 7 days basically cooling off period where they can actually pull out as well, which for them, sorry, not 7 days, 5 days, that's 5 business days, from when they can actually then terminate the contract with no penalty. So that's probably a bit of peace of mind you can say to them as well.
Adam,
yes,
it's Balavan.
Yep.
Just ask him, you know, some bank contract, bank loan contract, it says like a customer, they need to have the contract with them for 3 days, and, you know, just to make sure they understand, and then only we can sign it. Is that something like that? Do we have any sort of time frame, and customer, they need to have this contract with them and read and understand that before they sign it, or is it just a formality thing, like if you are giving them as a, you know, you can take your time to read and sign it?
Yeah, no, I would definitely be putting like a time frame on it, and like saying, yep, okay, let's once they've sort of given the quote and everything else, yeah, I'd be basically saying, yep, you know, let's meet up in 4 days time and let's sign it. Yeah, and basically put a date on, otherwise it's going to drag out. And then as far as the bank goes, you'll see there's allowances made in the contract that once it's been signed, for them to get bank approval as well. So that if for some reason they sign it, and then because their bank won't actually loan them the money until they see, you know, the contract and the plans, and depending on the lender, quite often they might even want to do a bit of research to make sure that they feel that they're not going to be over capitalizing on that on that project, to say, well, listen, hang on, this is a, you know, this is like a $1 million build, and you're building this in, I don't know, whatever suburb it's going to be, and, you know, you're never going to get that money back. So if you can't, if you default on your payments, if we sell it, we can't get our $1 million back. So they might do a bit of an investigation as well on the bank's part, and that's why it's in the contract that they've only got a certain amount of time to actually get approval from their bank. Yeah, sorry, yeah, I just saw that. I can hear it dropping in and out too for you, Valavan. So anyway, with that question, we can chat about that later on, or when if you listen to this recording, you'll hear it clear in the recording anyway. Oh, there we go. So Paul's just got there. I haven't got to there yet. I didn't know that one off the top of my head, Paul. But saying, yeah, there's a checklist on page 45 stating that the owner requires time to read and understand the contract. So there we go. So we would have got to that to one basically shortly anyway. But yeah, so definitely, as I said, you want to leave them the time. But I would specify with them, what that time's going to be. Is it going to be a week? Is it going to be, 2 days? But yeah, definitely. Yeah, they do need time to read over. You can't just go, here's the price, let's sit down and sign it. All right, so back over to here. So that was question 15.1. And just be wary too, guys, depending on who your contract with, they all do vary slightly. So there's this Master Builders one. The most common one's probably our Master Builders and HIA. And if any of you guys, when you signed up, we've got our own sort of version, shouldn't say we, builder registration, a part of a network called RBN, Registers Builders Network, and they've actually developed their own contract where they've tried to gear it a little bit more in favour of the builder. So just be aware with things like this that we're talking about how Paul said there about the checklist on page 45. That's why you want to read over your contract if you're using a HIA or an RBN one, just to be aware of what it does actually state, because whilst the legislative parts will be exactly the same about our deposit amounts and our progress payment stages and things like that, we actually want to be aware of the finer details that will change from contract to contract. So there's one that you can download for free, which is from Consumer Affairs Victoria, but most builders won't use it because they feel it's too heavily geared towards the consumer, obviously because it's a Consumer Affairs one. So yeah, just be aware of that when you actually do choose which contract that you're going to use. All right, I'll just see the other parts that I've got highlighted. All right, so 17.6. So just be aware, guys, and we'll cover this in the coming weeks. Basically, it just outlines how the builder will complete the works. This is about defective work. 21 days of receipt of a signed defect list. So obviously, we've got to be aware of in our contracts, and so this might be something that will change from contract to contract. Basically, when we get our defect list of how long we actually have got by the contract to go and rectify those. Next one down here. So 17.10, the builder to hand over keys upon payment of all monies under the contract. So on the payment by the owner of the final claim, the builder will provide all the keys to the land and the works to the owner or the owner's agent. So just be aware, the way this is most commonly done, as I probably told you, I worked with Simmons Home for a while, and in order to get your last payment, because a lot of people go, well, it's done, I've got the certificate of occupancy, here's my check, let's move in on the weekend. They actually would not give you the keys until the check had cleared, which is fair enough. So it's quite common practice that you get a money order. So then that way, money order, basically, you've got to have the money in the bank to actually write that. So that might be something you guys want to be aware of, because if your last claim is worth, say, 10%, and you've given someone the keys and all their warranties and everything else, and then they give you the check, or they go, yeah, I've paid it by electronic funds transfer, basically can I have the keys today? You might be skeptical and go, hang on, I don't want to give you the keys until I've got all my money. So the way to get around that is actually by doing the money order. And I know a lot of time, basically, these days when we do our apps on our phones, you can actually email the receipt over to somebody. So if you're with Commonwealth Bank, you can't actually pay someone if that money's not in the account. So it's up to you how you want to manage that. But as I said, I know the volume builders do it by a money order. All right, so back to liquidated damages. So we did actually speak about that. So if the builder fails to bring the works to completion by the completion date, the builder will pay or allow to the owner by way of a pre-estimated and liquidated damages, a sum calculated at the rate shown in point 17. Talks to you about the defect liability. Now we won't talk about too much about that because you guys can read that on your own. But I said that's going to vary from contract to contract probably. Maybe not too much. Shouldn't say it will. It might vary. But they are sort of pretty standard with things like that. But definitely read them because you don't just want to go, oh, I signed a master builder's contract once and it was 28 days. All right, and probably the last thing I'll show you as far as the parts that I just like to talk about here in the general parts is, you can read through your termination. So a lot of that is actually, you'll read that on your own, but that would be also out of our Contract Act, which you've already covered, which outlines, when the owner can actually terminate and when us as the builder can also terminate as well. So number 25 is what I want to talk about, just something for your own knowledge. it talks about miscellaneous here about how all unfixed and demolished materials. So all unfixed building materials supplied by the builder and not paid for by the owner, and all demolished materials shall be the property of the builder unless otherwise stated in the contract. So we'll basically fill that in a little bit later on. So yeah, if we're doing demolition, and if you're doing a lot of sort of residential work, residential and it's what's I'm looking for, like renovation and sort of extensions. If you're doing stuff that's in a city and a lot of stuff was built 100 years ago, you might find that some of the material is hard to get these days. So I know when I was in Queensland, there was a guy when he used to, I forget what type of tile it was, basically with roof tiles, he would actually go and basically take all those off by hand and store them, because he, in the area he was in, basically when someone did an extension, they would then want to use obviously the same type of tile. They were quite hard to get, or you had to pay a lot for them, and so he was basically then getting those roof tiles for free, and yeah, basically then he was able to then use those on another job. So basically stuff that's demolished is actually ours unless it is basically specified in the contract. So Subit here's got here, does the owner has the right on imposing a 5% retention sum? So now with the retention, Subit, in my experience, is only for basically for commercial buildings, and that's because they don't have the homeowner's warranty insurance. So if you're not sure what retention is, guys, in the commercial building, let's just say I go and build a an Aldi store. So basically what they'll normally do is keep a percentage of the contract price, which is known as retention. And that's basically for me to say, hey, Adam, for the next 12 months, we need you to basically come and do any maintenance, fix any defects, because that's what's in the contract. And once you do that, we will then give you your last payment of the 5%, which is retention. So in our residential, there's actually no retention, and that's why we have a contract and the Building Act that says we're liable to basically come back and fix this work. And then if for some reason, if we don't, then we can be pursued, through legal avenues such as VCAT and so on, or if we actually are no longer trading, that's what the homeowner's warranty insurance is all about. To basically cover the client, to say, hey, listen, Adam built my house, he's closed down his company and he's in the Bahamas, and he's claimed bankruptcy. Who's going to come and fix my house? That's then the homeowner's warranty insurance. But in commercial, that's where they keep a percentage of that final contract sum, which is known as retention, to make sure we come back and basically finish our work. And if we don't, then they can then use that 5% to actually pay another contractor to come and fix a defective work or any maintenance. All right, so down here, then it does just talk about something. We won't read it now, but talks about, if you've got disputes, basically where to go to and so on. So that's in there. And then it talks about the GST. And that's when Subit asked me before about, does it include basically GST? And it says, yes, GST inclusive values for these progress payments. That's all in there as well. All right, so down here, we're going to give you a scenario. So what we do, we might do a little bit of it, and then we'll go and have a break, give my voice a break, seeing I've been going for about an hour. But basically, we're going to now fill out a contract. Now, can I just get a bit of feedback? Either type in the box or tell me. Is there anyone here who's going for a limited license? Probably not so much carpentry, but if you're not going for DBM, DBU, or carpentry license, let me know, and I'll give you a different contract to fill out if you prefer, rather than you be filling out a contract for a new home, because if you're going to be doing bathroom and kitchen renovations, your contract will be slightly different. So if anyone would like that, let me know, and if not, we'll just basically proceed with how to do this one. Or if you've already done this subject previously and you go, look, I've already filled out this contract, Adam, I'd like to do one of the minor works ones, then let me know, and after I explain this, I'll actually talk through how to do that. All right, so this is now, if you've got your hard copy in front of you guys, basically page number 33, and these are special conditions. So let me just bring up the scenario that we're going to give you guys on how to fill out this contract. So let me find it here. And I can't find it. That's good. What I'll do when we have our break, I'll basically scan it and put it up for the guys who haven't got it. So just give me a second. For some reason, sorry, I don't have that scenario there. But basically what it is, it's outlining we're doing, you know, a 3-bedroom brick veneer home and so on. And the part I'm getting at here is on this contract scenario that we're doing, we've actually got some, actually I will have it, so give me a second. If you hear that, that's my boy's having a bit of a fight. So sorry if that's coming through. I've got the 3-year-old who's starting to learn to stand up to his 7-year-old brother. And 1 second, guys, I'll bring up this scenario because it'll be on this system that we're actually using. So give me a second. Actually, what I'll do, it'll take me a little while to find it. I'll find that we have a bit of a break. But basically, with our special conditions, you'll see when we fill out this contract with the actual scenario it gives us, it's pretty much follow it from the top, and the first thing you'll see is the first thing you write. So you're not sort of going back and forth and flicking through the contract. So this is probably the only part that sort of basically does sort of confuse guys a little bit, where in this we would have our special conditions of our contract, and one of them is basically saying that the owner basically has to have approval from the bank within 21 days that they can get the $300,000 for us to build this house. So that's basically special contract number one, special condition number one. The other one there is basically stating our variation fee, saying if you want a variation, whether you choose or not to actually accept that variation, it's going to be $1,100 for me to actually go to the bother of drawing it up and, you know, calculating what I need to do, my estimates and so on. So any variation is going to have a $1,100 fee attached to it. And then number three, there's a third special condition that basically says it's about the crossover. So if it's actually not there, then it's at the owner's expense that they've actually got to do the crossover, or if it's got to be moved to a different spot because the crossover is already there, that's going to be the owner's expense as well. So then from there, this here is really just filling out the contract. Now you're going to notice that when you fill it out, there's certain stuff that we haven't given you all the information on. It's just purely because we didn't want to waste your time. So when it says, you know, what's your fax number? We haven't given you a fax number, but as you would know, there's no skill in writing what your fax number is. If you had a fax number, you'd know it. So things like that. So this is basically the owner. So don't get mixed up, this is the owner. What's his name? You know, what's his address? What's his phone? What's his business number? So then who's actually the builder? And I think same thing here, we actually haven't given you a Master Builders Victoria membership number. So these things here that are blank, I said, don't stress if they're actually not there, because at the end of the day, if you knew your number, you would just write it in. We haven't given you the homeowner's warranty insurance details. As I said, just didn't want to waste too much time in filling out blank information that you could just copy off your license or off any of your own material that you had. So we have actually given you basically where the land of the house is going to be. And then here we basically do a description of the work. So basically, you know, 4-bedroom brick veneer home. It's 24 squares and it's got a tiled roof and a double garage. So then same thing again, basically the specifications. We didn't give you all of this, basically who prepared them, who supplied them, and you'll know when you read through your document what you've got to write. Same thing again then, who actually did the plans, who did the engineering. And then this part here is actually where we do our calendar. This is how long we're saying it's going to take to do our job. Now I have actually seen in some contracts where we don't actually break it down into how many days for wet weather, how many days with Saturdays and Sundays, and it's just basically saying I've allowed 150 days for this job. Now me personally, I'm a fan of actually, if you've got one of those contracts that allows that, I'm a fan of breaking it down, because this is then going to give us some backup if we need to do an extension of time. Because if we've allowed here that we've got, you know, 10 wet weather days and we've had a really wet winter and we've missed, you know, 20 days, then that shows this is why I've gone over, because I only allowed 10 days but I've had 20. And some people don't understand point B, delay subsequently caused by the effect of inclement weather. So we might have had it raining for 5 days, and that's great, that's 5 wet days, but then if we can't get on site because it's a bog, you know, we've got board piers that haven't been poured and they're full of water, and therefore we've had to delay the work because we've had to get a pump in and pump it out or whatever, that's actually then, we want to allow days for that as well. So that's what that one there's about. And then the others is pretty self-explanatory, and we've given you the numbers to put in there. And you basically add those and tally them up. And then we come down to our price. It says here, this one here, and then there'll be some parts there that aren't applicable. So basically it says a detailed description of any non-domestic building work to be carried out. Now I personally can't think of anything for that, because it gives an example: work in relation to a farm building, or to accommodate animals, or to work solely for business purposes. So because this is a major domestic building contract, the only thing I can maybe think about that is if you were doing something out on someone's property, and yeah, for some reason, you know, you had to pull down some fences or build a farmhouse to put the animals in because the trucks were coming in, you would list that in there, but not something I've ever really seen. But if it was, that wasn't domestic building work, then you would put an allowance in there for it. But in this scenario, it's not applicable, so I always put in there just like a blank check. You know, you don't leave anything. If you guys are probably too young to write checks, some of you, basically not applicable. You put in what our contract price is, what our deposit is, and that's when it gives another warning to the owner about, you know, basically it can change because of prime costs and provisional sums. And as we read through here, this then just goes through about service and facilities. It's all got to do with the gas and the sewer and the stormwater, basically who's actually going to be paying the connection for that. And in this scenario that we were giving you is that it's up to the owner to actually ring and get the gas connected and do the stormwater and the electricity. And that's pretty standard. I know that when I built my house, I said it was when I was at Simmons Homes and they built it for me, I actually had to go and get all the electricity and the water connected in my name, and they then had use of it whilst they were building. So I said it wasn't a huge amount of electricity bill, but yeah, that was something that I had to do, and it was in the contract that I had to basically go and do that. This sort of flows on with that, so you'll know when you read through your scenario. This is basically who's actually organising the permits and so on. And then here, this is when we basically outline basically for the progress payments, how long do they actually have to pay us. And it says here if nothing stated 7 days, so you might want to say 5 days. Then the period of claim for the final payment, and this is all actually in the scenario we give you. How long is the defect liability period? What's that interest rate we were talking about? If they're late, basically what our public liability is worth, and then our liquidated damages. So see there's one for the owner and then one for the builder. Here's fixtures or fittings not included in the contract but shown on the plans and specifications. In this scenario it's not applicable, but what you might have is that someone says, hey listen, there's a bath that I've seen, basically it's a second-hand bath at a salvage yard, and I actually want to use that as my bath. So we want to have that written in the contract so that it shows we're actually not liable for paying for that bath. Any materials that the owner might want to supply, so same thing again, they might choose that they want to you know, supply some of their own, and so we would document what that would actually be. And it says all items of work. So the guy might be a sparky and he wants to do his own sparky work on his house. So we would say, yeah, all electrical work to be supplied by the owner. So second-hand materials, it does actually go back at our clause 10.1 and state that we're not allowed to use second-hand materials unless they're specified. So as I said before, with that guy who used to do a bit of his own demolition and keep all the roof tiles, you would specify in there that yes, these roof tiles are second-hand, or it might be you know, some sort of reclaimed flooring that you're using. So we're going to specify any second-hand materials that we're actually using. But in this scenario, we're actually not. Now we get to our prime cost items. This is where a lot of guys get confused the first time they do this. So we put in what the description is. So we might say, yep, it's a toilet. Basically, the builder's supply per item. So that basically means how much per toilet. So that's 350 we've got here for the toilet. Then, okay, what's the quantity? So we've got 2 toilets. And then, so this one here, and when it says prime cost item allowance, that's actually the total. So if we've got a toilet at 350 and there's 2 of them, the actual prime cost item allowance is going to be $700. And then we're going to add our 20% margin on top of that. And this is one thing that I think it should have, what the actual total is with our margin on it, because then it's transparent, and it is transparent, but the owner and us have to then go and work it out and go, okay, well, that allowance is $700. What's then 20% on top of that? So yeah, it's saying that we're going to add 20% basically on top of this allowance. And basically then we do the same. Oh, I've gone too far. This is our provisional sum. So what the provisional sum, what we've given you here is saying that it's tiling. So what's the estimated quantity of the material. So we've gone, there's 80 square meters of tiling, and then what's the builder's allowance for each component or unit of the material. So basically we've gone there that it's, you know, for the labor for that is going to be $130 a square meter. That's what we've actually put in the scenario we've given you. So then we've got to actually then put the total is. So 80 square meters, and then there's 130, that's for the tiles, and then 130 per square meter for the labor. We add those two together by, and then put our total in here, and it comes to about 10,400. And then we actually specify what our margin is on our builder's margin on these. It doesn't give us the 20%, but by all means, chuck your 20% or your 10%, 15, whatever you want to do. So then we come over here, and this is when we outline our progress payments. So we're going to build all the stages. Now you'll notice, because it does say here, contract to build to lockup stage, contract to build to fixing stage, or contract to build all stages. So in this scenario, we're going to build all stages. So we're going to fill in this one here. So you'll notice that the deposit is left blank. So whilst we can claim a 5% deposit, we don't actually have to if we don't want it. We can claim 1%, 4%, whatever we want. So basically, we've stipulated in here that we're going to claim 5%. And, you know, I would always claim 5% because you want to claim as much as you can. And then that's obviously going to affect what our final payment is, because obviously the bigger the deposit, the smaller the final one's going to be. So we basically put what that percentage is, and then we write our dollar value including our GST. So this here, we'll talk about it a little bit later. We did cover it last week about if we're making up our own progress payments, but we're not. That's what's known as Method B, and we went to our contract regulations to sort out when we could do that. And this is still part of Method B, and that's pretty much all we needed to do. And then we actually, there's a checklist there, and this is where Paul was saying, you know, before signing this legally binding contract, check this list. So it's worth you checking it too to make sure the owner's done everything they need to do. And also it's a good one for the builder, and it talks, sorry, for the owner, and that's when it spoke there somewhere about them having time to actually read over the contract. And then we come off, and basically we sign it and date it. So one thing we also want to be aware of, guys, we want to initial every page. So even way back at the front of the document here, we want to initial these so that they understand what provisional sum is and what fixing stage is. So it's got owner's initials and builder's initials. They initial every page, and also get them to initial every page of the drawings and the specifications as well. So sorry, I spoke for a bit longer than I was planning to. So why don't we have our break? I know a lot of the guys like their 15 minutes to have basically a tea break. So why don't we have 15 minutes? We'll come back, you know, it's going to be 7:42, and basically come back, start working through that contract. I'll email that over to you, Valavan, so you've got one. And yeah, come back and we'll work through it. And by all means, as you're working through it, if you've got any questions, just let me know. And if you guys want to actually do the minor works one, when we come back in 15, just actually email me, not email me, text me or say, Adam, come for the minor one, and I'll send one of those over to you as well. So I'll see you in 15, have a good break, and then we'll yeah, basically come back and you guys can fill that out. Yeah, no worries, Subit. By all means, mate, if you drop off early, that's fine. And yeah, listen to the recording if you need to. And if you've got any questions about anything, just give me an email and I'll get back to you. Sorry, a bit of a hiccup there. All right, guys, welcome back. Hopefully, had a good bite to eat, maybe a drink. Lucky enough, maybe had a beer. So yeah, actually, I should have asked: does anyone actually need to complete this contract? Because the last thing I want to be doing is sitting here if every single person has actually completed the contract before. So maybe if you do need to basically fill it in, just type in the box that you have to fill it in, and then that way we're all sort of not here waiting for each other. Actually, everyone might not even be back from their break yet either by the look of what's on my screen. I suppose Alex does. Yeah. So I did see you drop out before, Alex. So if you're back on, you've got no connection problems? Yeah, oh yeah, Bjork needs it. Cool. All right, so that's good. We've got, yep. All right, so let's, you've got a couple of guys there say that they need to basically complete it. So by all means, let's go ahead, guys. This is what this is for. So go ahead and complete it. So do you actually need a copy of the scenario there, Bjork, or are you okay with it? You got it in your folder? All right, cool. No worries at all. So let's go ahead and complete that. And I said if anyone actually wants to do a minor one, let me know. But I don't think if anyone wanted to, they feel like they're pretty across it. So yeah, once you've finished your contract, guys, just let me know. I'll be sitting here waiting. And if you've got any questions while you're doing it, by all means let me know. And those guys who have done it before, just chill out, maybe come back in 20 minutes or something, because it'll probably take the guys for the 20 to 25 minutes to get it finished. Yeah, sorry, Valerie, we had started. I saw that you had actually dropped out there for a second. All I was saying to the guys is basically we're just going to fill in this contract. So I presume you haven't done it before, I don't think, if you needed me to send you over a copy. All right, cool. So have you actually got the scenario? Oh, so you have done it before. All right, cool. That's no worries at all. Okay, so yeah, there's a couple of guys who haven't. So we're just going to sort of oh, so you haven't done it before. Okay, no worries at all. So do you actually need a copy of the scenario of the contract, or have you actually got that? So you do need it. Okay, well, give me a second. I forgot to scan it during the break. So actually, I'll just scan it and I'll email it over to you, and then that way you can basically get started on it. Sorry, Valervan, just bear with me a minute, mate. I've got a couple of issues here where I don't have enough USB ports, so I'm just going to unplug some stuff and I'll scan it through. Just about done.
No, for some reason it keep dropping me, and I don't know why. So yeah, that's why.
Sorry, Valervan, I actually attached the wrong document. I'll do it again in a second. So if you open that up, you're probably wondering what the hell was that thing you just sent me. There we go. That should do it.
Adam, you there?
Yeah, mate, far away.
So it says there are no services and facilities fees not included in the contract price, and there are no excluded service fees. What does that mean?
Yeah, it's like a double negative that yeah, so basically when we look at that contract, let me get to it, but you just make it not applicable. It's just basically saying that there are no fees that we need to worry about connecting the services that we need to add on. You know, like I said, like Telstra and gas and stuff like that. So that'd basically be saying that once you guys move in, then it's up to you to actually pay the connection and so on. So yeah. Yeah, it's badly worded. Like there are no, there's no not included or something. It's like, hang on, doesn't a double negative make it a positive? So yeah, if you just chuck NA in there, mate, that'll be fine.
Okay, so in that part of the contract where it says service and facilities, just put NA there?
You just put an NA there, yeah. Yeah, but just
No
be
problem.
aware,
Thanks.
obviously, that when you actually do, and I suppose when you probably do some of your development, you probably connect because a lot of your stuff sort of you're the developer on it, aren't you? So you don't have to sort of deal
Yeah,
with
I'm the.
it. Yeah,
I connect everything up, and
yeah,
then on day of settlement, I'll disconnect them.
yeah, and that's basically
Or
just
I'll.
it's just outlining that process how you would do that with the client if you were
Yeah,
sort of connecting it on their behalf or getting them to connect it or so on. Yep.
yeah, no problem.
All right.
Thanks, Adam.
Cool, mate. So you guys are, one's doing their contracts. Just definitely make sure you let me know when you're done. Otherwise I'll be sitting here till 10 o'clock and you guys will be as well. Thanks, Burik. What I'll just give Valavan, if you don't mind, mate, I'll just give you another 5 minutes. I know you probably won't get it done. It was probably because of the issues of me having to email that stuff over, but just so we can get through the other bit of the content and maybe, yeah, just fill out the contract at the end of the session or tomorrow or something. If you've got any questions, give me a buzz about it, if that's all right with you, Valavan. Cool. Thanks, mate. All right, guys, we might go through this and then we can finish off these last few questions. All right. So I'll just go down to what we hopefully should have filled in. And I said, just check what you've filled in so far and see if it matches. And then, yeah, if you've put one, name in the wrong spot, it's not the end of the world because, it's hard when you're doing it based on a scenario. Whereas if you were doing this for real, you'd know what your name was and what your phone number was, and what your client's number was. So as I said, I'll just read through this, basically how it should look. So as I said, we had those special conditions. So what we should have hopefully had was there something about receiving 300,000 from the NAB within 21 days to finance the project. That would have been one of the special conditions. The other one was a variation fee, and then the other one was about the owner paying to pay the crossover. All right, so I'll scroll down. Not too concerned about this part here, guys. That was just really, here's the name and put it in there, because as I said, if you put, James Ronaldson instead of whatever the builder's name was, it's not the end of the world, because you would know when you're filling in the actual contract that you were the builder and this was your section and that was theirs. So we obviously didn't give you our homeowner's warranty details, but you would have that too once you guys become registered. You'll have that. And sorry, one second, I'm just going to bring up the questions so I can see them. Then this part here, same thing again. This was just the land on which it will be performed. So 2 Lakeview Street, Frankston. It just gave us what the folio number was, who the registered landowner was. Yeah, pretty sort of generic stuff to fill in there. Description of major domestic work that is valued in excess of $5,000. So that would have just been a description of the job. So however you described it, I described it as a single-story brick veneer, 24 squares with 4 bedrooms, double garage and a tiled roof. So as long as we described how it was, that was fine. Then we would have written in here basically the specifications, same thing, in a generic thing we would have written in. Basically it was by New Vogue specifications, and that it was up to the owner to supply the builder. And then same sort of thing with the plans are done by Plans Are Us, owner to basically to supply the builder. And same thing again, just say about who was actually doing our engineering computations. So then when we come over here, we would have had our construction period. So we should have had that it was 9 days as a result of inclement weather, 5 for any delays caused by that weather. There was then 24 Saturdays and Sundays, 3 public holidays, and then other foreseeable breaks in the continuity of work. I don't think there was any for that. 2 rostered days off. The builder was going on holidays, his annual leave for 8 days. And then a delay that is reasonable having regard the nature of the contract, or is not possibly adequate to estimate and allow for delays likely to be caused by the nature of the contract. We chucked in there 5. So that then basically add those up, and that gives us down here, basically we should have had 56 for the total delays, and then we had a completion time of 120, which actually then meant the total construction period, including the delays, was 176. So if you didn't get that, just check your sums. It might have been just an adding error on your calculator. If you're like mine, you've got a phone and the calculator section's that small, you quite often hit two numbers. So this right here we obviously made not applicable because we weren't doing anything on the farm. So this is where it says contract price includes GST. So just like a check, we should have had it written in words and then in dollar value of $352,000, and then the deposit, because it was going to be 5%, was $17,600, and then that was just a warning about the prime cost items and provisional sums. So we said here that this was not applicable, and then this was just who was basically supplying the planning and the building permits. So I think it was required, not already obtained. That was for the planning, and the building permit was obtained and paid for by the builder, I think, from the scenario. So then on to here, we've actually changed the 7 days and gone that it's actually 5 days payment terms. The final payment was also 5 days. The defects liability we said was 13 weeks. And you can see the interest rate, I'm pretty sure that should have been left blank. If nothing stated, the fixed rate pursuant of Section 2 of the Penalty Interest Rate Act 1983. So that would basically, just like any acts we've got, would outline basically what it should be. But I'd be putting an interest rate in there rather than having to refer back to all that. Public liability, we had 10 million. The liquidated damages for basically to pay the client were $350, and the liquidated damages if the owner held us up as the builder was $1,000. So then the fixtures and fittings are not included. They were not applicable. We were basically supplying all those. There was no second-hand materials. And then our prime cost items. Now, depending on what order you put them in, I had toilets at $350 each, and there was 2 of them, therefore made the allowance of $700. Then I had a range hood at $500. There was only 1 of them, so then it was $500. The bench top, $800. Only 1 of those, so therefore it was $800 allowance. And then the oven was $800. Sorry, $800. Sorry, oven in that one, $800, and basically 1 of those, so made a total $800, and we had 20% margin on everything. So then our provisional sum, so I had it written as tiles. Basically it was $80 per square metre. The labour portion was 130 square metre, so therefore the total, basically we worked out how many square metres there was. Basically should have come to 10,400, and we chucked a margin of 20% on there. Then we had our breakdown of our contract stages. So 5% should have been 17,600, then 35,200, 52,800, 123,200, 88,000 for the fixing stage, 35,200 for the final, and when we added all those up it should have hopefully come to 100%, and then also our total should have then come to 352,000. So one thing I did want to just cover, so we did talk about this last week, about this part here, method B. So this was when we spoke about when we can actually change our progress payments. Now we did actually tab this and highlight this in our Contract Act and our contract regulations. And if you've got them in front of you, if you haven't, it's not the end of the world. But you'll basically notice that this here, if I scroll down, is directly, someone want to talk there for a sec? No, maybe someone plugging in and plugging out. So this here is directly out of the contract regulations, where it just says, you know, that change of legal rights and so on. So basically, and they've got to then sign that to say, we acknowledge that we've read this warning before signing the contract. So just going over again what we covered last week, there's certain times when we can actually make up our own progress payments. So if we're doing a standard 3-bedroom, 4-bedroom brick veneer home, this is what we should be using. But when we're actually, there's times that we can actually make our own progress payments, and it's on, if you've got it in front of you, it's actually on page 8 of your domestic contract regulations, and I'll just read some of the examples. So it says examples would include. So it doesn't mean that these are the only 4, but the examples they provide in the regulations are where it's very expensive to prepare the land for building, for example, where the site is steep or rocky, where the house is so large it will take a long time to complete, and therefore immediate progress payments are therefore required, where exceptionally expensive finishes are required, meaning that the final stage will represent a much larger portion of the whole price, and where an architect is engaged to independently assess the value of the completed work for progress payments. So it goes on saying, you know, you need to make sure that your house, you know, basically is varying from the normal. But if that fits into it, that is then when we can use this and make up our own progress payments. But if we're going to do this, what we need to do is actually name the stage, and it says if the stage is not the same as a stage defined in basically 40.1, which is these ones here, then what does that stage mean? So we need to basically describe it, and then say what the percentage of the contract price it is, and then what the amount in figures that it is. So just reading those examples out of the regulations, it does say that if you've got very, if the site is very steep or very rocky. So just as a bit of an example, we can see here for base stage, we can normally, or we can only claim 10%. So let's say hypothetically we're doing something where it's, you know, it's a really steep site, and we've had to do a lot of excavation work, and then maybe because of the soil classification we might have to put in, you know, a heap of screw piles, a heap of board piers, you know, then we're going to and then pour our slab. What we could be doing is breaking that down into like, almost like an excavation stage. And then if we've got a lot of board piers and it's going to be, massive, we could say then, board piers, and then basically for when you would say that when they have actually been basically bored and poured. And then the slab stage might be then when the slab is on top of that. And as you can see, when we're at slab stage in that scenario, we could have had 3 progress payments. So if we're doing a job that's, 600 grand, and you might find even that because of it is so expensive, that base stage might not make up 10% of the actual contract. It might end up being 15%. So as you can see, say if it was 15% and, it's $600,000, 600,000 times your 15% of it is going to be quite large. And instead of having the burden of carrying all that until it's finished, we could have some money coming in over those stages. So if it's going to take, a few weeks to actually get all that done, then we're not outlaying all that money basically and then putting in the one progress payment. So that is actually the benefit of using method B. But just be aware we need to make sure we're only using it when we're supposed to. And probably from my experience, the people who use it incorrectly is more so our limited trades, like say our cabinet makers, our landscapers, because they have this same scenario in a minor works contract. And I think because they've got, even they're doing a much smaller contract, basically they're outlaying a lot of money for material for the site, where they'll go and make up all the kitchen cabinets, the benches and everything, and they actually, because a job only might take 1 week, they don't really then break that down into these 5 different progress payments. I think what's the point of putting one progress payment in every 2 days when there's when it's a 5 or 7 day turnaround to pay it anyway. So what they do, which is illegal but they do it anyway, is say, okay, if you want me to do it, give me a 60% deposit up front, and then on completion give me the other 40. So that's actually illegal. Once we're doing this, if you read what it talks about in our acts and our regulations, we actually can't claim for work that we haven't done. And when we read before, for it to be done, it needs to basically be installed. So by us saying, yep, well, the work's done because I've made those kitchen bench tops, the cabinets, the carcasses, whatever, and they're actually at the factory, it's not done because they're not installed. So if you are doing a minor works contract, or even one on here, we can only claim for work that's actually finished on site. All right, so then, and I think that was it. So if you basically got through there, you would just read over the checklist and then basically signed off on it. So back onto this one here though, with just for if you guys ever do a minor works contract, this is what we were going to do if we did the scenario tonight, but no one felt the need to do one. Like I said on that scenario before, if you are doing a deck or a kitchen and bathroom reno, because I actually do my own bookkeeping, I often think, well, I couldn't be bothered having all these different progress payments. Basically give me the deposit and then we'll do the 95% on the completion because I'm only going to be there for 4 days. And when I was talking to Steve, our training manager, when I was writing up the scenario for the minor works contract, he said that he would always, no matter how small the job was, put an interim payment in there. And I think this was really good advice, because if a payment ever gets held up, more than likely it's always the very last one. So if we do our 5% deposit, and then basically we're doing a kitchen and bathroom renovation, and then basically claim another 85% when it's pretty much finished, normally the dispute is going to come at the very end when we then give them the last payment, and they go, well, hang on, I'm actually not really happy with that tap, or I'm not happy with that chip on the tile, and therefore it's only withholding 10% or 5% of the actual cost of the job. Because if you just do it sort of the easy way on your bookkeeping, if there's any dispute, then you're going to be waiting for 95% of that payment. Because if you put an interim one in there after about 3 days, more than likely they're just going to pay it. And then if there is actually some hold up, it'll only be hopefully 5% of the job, and then you've been paid for most of the work that you've been done. So that was something that I hadn't thought of, but I think it was pretty good advice when Steve passed it on to me. All right, so what we've got about half an hour to go, and if it takes longer, that's fine. But I'll just basically close that down. And that's the minor works. So if anyone wants a copy of the minor works contract, I'll probably just email that out to everybody. Oh yeah, sorry, someone's got a question there?
Yep.
Yeah,
Adam, can we go back to, I stuffed up on the percentage part when you were breaking it down with the payments.
Yep.
Can we just go back and tell me the figures you got. So I've got 17.6 for the 5% deposit.
Yep. 1 second, I'll just pull mine out. So I'll look off my hard copy because it's a lot clearer than the one on the screen. I'll just read it to you. So yeah, I've got 17,600 for the deposit.
Yep. Yep.
35,200 for the 10% base stage.
10%. It's got 20% here though in the on the hard copy.
Are you filling in the wrong table? Are you filling in contracts to build all stages down the bottom? Maybe you're doing the top one.
That's where I stuffed up. Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's cool. Yeah. So yeah, that is something a lot of guys get to. Yeah. So if you read that part, there's 3 different ones where contract to build a lock-up stage, contract to build fixing stage, or contract to build all stages.
Okay. So can we go again? 10% was 35,200.
Yep. 15% was 52,800.
Yep.
35% was 123,200.
Yep.
25 was 88,000.
Yep.
And it would have made that last final payment 10%, and that would have been 35,200 as well.
Awesome. Thank you.
Cool, mate. No worries at all. So yeah, so this is a minor works one, guys. So what I'll do, if anyone wants one, I'll just send it over. If you don't want it, just delete it. But yeah, a lot of guys haven't seen these, and you may as well have it. Save you buying it for $50 or whatever it is, if you ever need to get one. So that's a minor works contract. We can leave that one there. And I just need to find this. I've accidentally closed this document, so give me a second, and I will. Oh no, there it is. Right, so this here is probably the last part that we'll cover tonight, and as you can see, it's still in Module 3. So I just think this ties in really well with the contracts that we started on last week. So what I'll do, there's a few questions here I'd just like to discuss with you guys to make sure that we understand them. Yep, yeah, everyone's saying they'd like a copy. Yep, no worries at all, guys. I'll send it over. Cool. Yeah, so yeah, we'll go through these questions here. And basically, I'll just explain the ones that I think need a little bit of explaining, and then from there, that'll give you guys, 20 minutes or however long it takes to basically go through and then finish the ones that are left over. So this one here just says, what is a major domestic building contract, and what categories of builders are permitted to execute these? So that's actually, it's a bit of a vague question, and what we're trying to get at there is that basically under the Domestic Building Contract Act, it just says that anything over $5,000 needs to have a contract to it. So that might be something that you're going to actually get in your multiple choice. So anything over $5,000, you need to have a contract. And then obviously to sign a contract, you need to be a registered building practitioner. So that's basically what is a major domestic building contract. Well, we just saw one. It's what we fill out for work over $5,000. And the applicable legislation is our Contract Act 1995. And also when it says who's permitted to execute these, so whilst it is a registered building practitioner, just be mindful as well that you can actually be appointed to sign the contract on behalf of a registered builder. So if you think of who owns Metricon, who owns Simmons, who owns Carlisle Homes, and things like that. It's not, it's not Gary Simmons who's signing every contract. He's got someone basically in his office who's actually his contract administrator. So he can actually be, if you're in a partnership, there's no reason why you can't have someone delegated to basically sign your contract. So then this one here just says provide an example. When would a minor works contract be applicable? And that's just what I showed you there before. Basically for stuff between 5,000 and 50,000. So that's the master builders one. I'm pretty sure from memory HIA might be between 5 and 30,000. So that's what that question there is getting at. When would you use? And basically they're for smaller jobs that aren't actually going to be a whole house. So I'll let you guys work out number 3. You guys can do that one on your own. Just a bit of a trick question. You've obviously got to add the GST to it. This stuff here, you're actually going to find we might even just talk about this one rather than you be searching through your contract, but it just says, under what circumstances can second-hand materials be used in construction of a new home, and where would this be found in your major domestic building contract. So when we spoke about earlier on our contract about all the different like the table of contents, there's a section in there where it talks about basically using second-hand materials and saying that we can't use them. So that's that just wanted you to reference that out of your contract. But all you really need to know is that you're not allowed to use them unless they're specified. As I said, we did give some example. I gave some examples of using like the reclaimed flooring. All right, that one there, you'll be able to do that one on your own because we just did a scenario out of the contract on that. So that one there, yeah, it's up to you whether you want to write it in or not, but I'll leave that one there for you guys. I sort of did cover that comprehensively pretty then about using method A and method B. So see if you can remember that and find it, and we'll go through it. What two pieces of legislation explain the circumstances under which each method can be used? So that's also that method A when we're changing our progress payments. So what are the two books we use for that? What's 3.8? It's just basically, it says you and your client just executed a contract to build a home in Glenroy, and the client's borrowed 350 grand from the NAB. As the builder, what minimum insurance will you have to provide the building surveyor separately and the bank to get your progress payments flowing? So we're going to cover this one a lot more in the coming weeks, but basically, as you know, we need public liability. We need to have our homeowner's warranty insurance when we get registered, and you might possibly have to have work cover depending if you've got employees. So I said you can write these down now, but if you haven't, don't stress. We'll be doing a lot of this on our business subject. And the one that a lot of people don't or aren't aware of is the contract works insurance. And what that is basically based on is the bank wanting to know that if we get the house up to, say, lockup, and then something happens, someone accidentally drives a truck through it or it burns down, who's going to actually then pay for it to get back up to lockup? And when we say who, it's actually the builder, because the owner doesn't take possession of the house until we get the certificate of occupancy. So the bank wants to know that they've invested 200 grand in that property, and something goes wrong. Does the builder have the funds to actually get it back up to 200 grand where they've invested their money? And that's normally comes through contract works insurance, and we'll cover that more in more depth next week when we do our business subjects. All right, this one you'll probably know, so I'll leave that one for you guys. This one here is a trick question. I'm not a big fan of trick questions because you'll be flicking all through your contract act and your regs and you won't find it. What is the minimum deposit a builder must charge? There is actually no minimum. So if you wanted, you could charge no deposit if you wanted to. So yeah, don't want you looking around for ages on that one there. Number 11 you can do on your own. Number 12, it says referring to your contract under the section termination. So go to your contract and then explain basically the circumstance where an owner or builder could attempt to exit a contract to build a complete house even though the build is currently at lock-up stage. So have a look at your contract and there'll be a section in there on basically termination, and there will definitely be some stuff also in your act or in your contract act as well about termination. All right, another one, I'm not a big fan of abbreviations, so that there. You've just finished a new 24 square home for your client. COO, that's some people call it C of O. What it is a certificate of occupancy. So that's basically saying the house is done, you're ready to move in, is about to happen, but the surveyor wants you to explain the handover process to him in detail before he will issue the permit. So in your book, guys, you'll see that there's actually a handover kit in there. And this is towards the back of this module. And what it's getting at is that once we hand over the house to the client, we need to let them be aware of what their responsibilities are when they move in. And the most common one people hand out, it's in your folder called I think it's called the CSIRO handover kit. And it basically just tells them they shouldn't be putting garden beds up against the house because it'll, you won't be able to see termites or termites if they're sort of getting in. It'll cover your weep holes. It'll say don't plant trees within a certain distance of your footings and things like this. So that's something we want to do when we hand over, and then also give them their warranties on their stove, whatever it is. Thanks, Paul. Whatever it is that they have to actually maintain. It's not also to, if you might have decks or different flooring, you might want to get in the maintenance guide on how to actually maintain the house on those things when they leave as well. And there's a few things just of examples in your folder. There's about floor finishes and stuff like that. All right. 14, you'll find that one there, and we actually want to tab that, so we'll go through it at the end. And 15 probably needs a little bit of explaining. According to the MDBC, so that's the Major Domestic Building Contract, so the contract you've just done, the defects liability period is optional for the builder. Basically, what is this and how do you apply it to your new home? So basically what that is just outlining the time frame of when we hand over. Normally it's pretty common, it's 3 months, and you'll say, look, I know we've done a defect list at handover, but there might have been stuff that we've missed. There might be a window that jams. So basically over the next 3 months, keep a list of anything that you find, and then basically I'll come out and do it all in one big hit. So basically don't don't call me every time that a door jams. Make a list, and at the end of 3 months we'll come back and honour that defect liability list. So that's basically how that sort of works. And depending on what you put in there, some put 3 months, some put 6 months. You'll be able to do 16 on your own. Number 17 is just really, as you as the builder, what are 5 things you factor into when you're preparing an estimate? And it's just things like, have they got the money behind them? Are they actually wasting my time? I don't know, also what profit margin do I want to put on? How long is this going to take for that profit margin, and so on? Not really something there's a right or wrong answer, but it's something you might be asked in an interview when they ask you about your estimation that you're going to do for your projects. And number 18, explain the cooling off period. So hopefully if you can, we would have done that last week, but just look in your contract act and you'll find it, and we'll tab it. And leave number 19, and I'll do it at the end. So I know we're getting a little bit late on time, so see how you go. We'll, if you get finished basically before 9, then just basically say, yep, I'm done, and we'll go through them. And I don't mind staying on late if you guys finish a little bit later. So have a crack at those other answers on your own and see how you go. Yep, no worries, Valavan. What I'll do, I don't know if I've got my own one that's handwritten. So Valavan's just asked for a copy of the completed copy of the contract. So I've got my handwritten one. What I'll do, I'll actually scan it and email it over. That's if you can read my handwriting. So Alex, yeah, there is actually pretty much every unit you get, at the back of each module, the answers should be there. So that's another thing too. If you're doing these and you're on your own, which you are obviously there, or if you're doing them on the weekend or something, there's nothing worse when you're looking for an answer for 20 minutes and you go, oh, is that the answer? I thought it meant something different. So yeah, in your folder there should definitely be answers under every module. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's valid. And I know the Master Builders one is definitely the minor works 5,000 to 50, and I think the HIA is 5 to 30, but not 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure it is.
What I mentioned was in the answer 3.2, yep. They put it other way around.
Oh, they put it the other way around,
Master Builders.
Okay.
Yep, yep.
Oh no, that must be wrong because I've got the Master Builders one here in front of me, and it says 5 to 50,000. And that's a Master Builders one there. So yeah, I'll let Steve know on the answering guide. He's got them around the wrong way.
Thanks, yeah. So if you get that sort of question in our multiple choice question, and should we specify one way? So if multiple choice, we will have the answer. If any question in the interview, if they ask, should we need to specify Master Builders that and HIA is this, or
yeah, no, they wouldn't ask something like that, because with a minor works contract, like there's lots of different, like, and you can even get a solicitor who does one for you, so it doesn't necessarily have to have the exact same value on it. It's just really something for the minor works. It'd be more, you wouldn't get it in a multiple choice. It'd be more just in your interview. They might say, okay, if you're doing a kitchen and bathroom renovation, you know what type of contract would you use for that? And that's when you'd say, well, I'd use, basically a minor works contract, and basically that's when we would use method B and make up our own progress payments, because it doesn't fit the progress payments that are outlined in the Domestic Contract Act. Yeah, so, yeah, you wouldn't get something like that in your multiple choice. Yeah, so with that, Alex, so Alex just asked me a question. If a builder decides to use method B for all his contracts and the client agrees, is this okay? And is this regulated in some way? It is. That's why I said a lot of people do it, but you need to. It's one of those things, without trying to sound like dodgy. It's one of those things that nothing's illegal until you get caught. So I'm not saying that you should be trying to be illegal, but as long as you can justify if something went wrong with one of your jobs, if you're using method B, you would just want to basically be able to justify why you used method B and why you didn't use method A. So as it does give you examples there about, if there's a lot of excavation work because of, well, not excavation, expensive to prepare the land, or where it's the house is so large that it will take a long time to complete. So if you're doing like really large jobs and they're taking you, an eternity to do them, then that would actually be a reason to, because as you said, there's only those handful of progress payments, and you could say, well, listen, I can't actually go by only having these progress payments coming once every 3 months. So that, you just got to be able to justify why you've gone to method B. So then Ben's just asked me about the method B. Would any stage name specify? No, it just needs to, if you look at it, and I've closed it down, I'll bring it back up again. It just needs to justify basically what that stage is. So let me bring it up again, and I'll show you. Yep, so here's our method B, and it just says what the name of the stage is, and it says if the stage is not the same as the stage defined in section 40, which these ones here are out of section 40, then basically what does this stage mean? So we've got to name the stage, or a description of the stage works if it's different from method A. So you would just, whatever that stage was, Ben, that you wanted to claim, you would just name it that. So basically the name, and then basically describe what it was, and then obviously be able to justify that it was a certain percentage. You wouldn't want to say, yep, okay, this stage here is earthwork stage, and it's 50% of the job. If it was 50% of the job, by all means, but if it was only 5% of the job, you'd get in a lot of trouble if you actually then claim 50. So yeah, just name it, mate, and then describe what it is. Yeah, exactly, Ben. That's exactly right. So just breaking down that that method A into basically probably into smaller sections, I suppose, and just defining what they are. Yep, cool. See you later, Ben. All right, guys, with these other answers, by all means, I know that it's getting late and you guys probably get up early. I'm more than happy to hang around if you wanted to finish them, or if you just want to basically go over them next session. Just let me know, because I don't want you guys to feel basically obliged to do it, because I know it's getting late and you might be a bit worn out. So you just let me know, you know, basically whatever's going to suit you. I'm more than happy to do it that way. All right, cool, Valvan. Yep, no worries at all. So anything that you're not sure of, just let me know, mate, or send me an email or give me a buzz and we'll cover it off. All right, thanks, Burak. No worries at all, mate. And I'll make sure I cover it next week anyway. Yeah, mate, no worries at all. I'll get my wife to, because my scanner, as you saw, I can put the whole document through, but for some reason, I haven't worked out how to make it into one PDF. So if I send it over from mine, it'll be in about 40 different attachments. So I'll get my wife to actually scan it up, and then when I'll get her to email it to me and I'll forward it over. Yeah, it's got more to do with the computer that I use is actually a work one, and there's lots of it doesn't let me adjust any of the settings, and that's all I've got to do. I've just got to ring IT and get them to sort it out, and it's just sort of been hard with me working during the day, then to come home and actually yeah, get them to do it. So but yeah, I've got I think I'm working from home on Friday, so I'll probably get them to do it then. All right, cool. See you later, mate. All right, so if you're listening to the recording, guys, that's the end of Module 3, which was actually week 2. So that was Module 3, and yeah, hopefully you enjoyed it, and get any questions, basically give me a buzz.